A bottle of French wine shattered into 1,000 fragments right at the doorstep. A dark crimson stain spread across the stone steps, mixing with the rainwater. I stood there, clutching a letter with the official seal of the mayor's office, unable to believe what I had just read. Notice of administrative penalty. Violation of public order. Peak Nguyen. My fingers trembled as I held the document. Tomorrow was supposed to be my engagement ceremony with Cheonseok, and this gift was meant for his family. And now everything was falling apart. And the one to blame was the very man I had been told to avoid all my life. But how had it happened that he became the one I feared losing more than anyone in the world? Flashback: in a small town, hidden at the foot of thick mountain ridges, the temple gates creaked in the wind just as they had years ago. I remember that day, when I first felt the warm spring air, filled with the fragrance of cherry blossoms drifting down onto the stone steps. I was 8 years old then, and my parents were taking me to a service, praying for luck and prosperity for our household. "Rumi, don't lag behind," my mother's calm but insistent voice carried through the rustle of the wind. My mother, Wayan, always carried herself with strict dignity, a straight back, impeccable manners, a gentle yet cold smile. The daughter of a well-known entrepreneur, she had fallen in love with my future father, Kang Chan-il, who later became mayor of our small but important town. Their marriage seemed harmonious, though even as a child I could sense the anxiety or worry in her gaze when it rested on me. At the temple, bored of the long chanting of sutras, my attention was caught by a boy, dark-skinned, with messy hair and eyes full of mischief. He joked with his little sister, breaking the silence, and my mother only shook her head. "That's Nguyen. I hope he doesn't drag you into his games, Rumi." Later, he sneaked up to me, tapped my shoulder, and burst out laughing. I barely held myself back from scolding him. My mother was watching me closely, demanding composure and self-control, whether because of my father's position or her own convictions. Nguyen remained in my memory as a noisy troublemaker, a little devil, as my mother and the neighbors used to say. He seemed proud of his reputation. But now, when I recall that day, I think, behind his laughter there was genuine kindness. Our families hardly interacted, we only occasionally exchanged glances, his mocking squint against my indignant frown. Ironically, years later my mother still thought meeting him was dangerous for my reputation. And perhaps she was right, otherwise why did he always appear where no one expected him? Our old town was surrounded by thick forests. Tourists came for the mountain trails and ancient temples. I often strolled down the main street, traditional architecture blending with modern buildings and new cafes the mayor's office encouraged to attract young people. I loved the measured life among the mountains, though I had visited Seoul and Busan, the bustle of the metropolis exhausted me. But peace was deceptive. Peak Nguyen was like a sudden gust of wind stirring up the routine. He appeared everywhere, in the cafe, the library, the store, on the basketball court, even at the town hall. And every time, I ran into him when I least wanted to. He was 2 years older. After high school, he went to a design college but dropped out, they said because of a fight or a conflict with a professor. People in town loved to gossip about Nguyen, but there was no confirmed story. I studied political science at university, as my father advised, to help him in the mayor's office. But my passion was literature and painting, and I dreamed of opening an art gallery at the foot of the mountains. My family built my future like a carefully planned project. Any mention of Peak Nguyen was a red light, his reputation could damage their image. Peak Nguyen only brings trouble, my mother reminded me. At social receptions, I met my future fiancé, Cheonseok, a promising politician. It was a calculation, not romance, and I obediently agreed. I was taught to believe that this was the right path. Present day choose only the best, dear. You need a gift for your future husband and his family, to show our noble taste. That's what my mother said when she sent me to the rare wine shop in the very center of town. It was a luxurious establishment with wooden shelves, where glass bottles shimmered in the elegant half-light. Each bottle carried its own history, origin, and price that could shock an ordinary customer. I carefully flipped through the catalog, trying to grasp the descriptions. The wines carried fruity, berry, and oaky notes, aged in French and Italian cellars. The shopkeeper, who introduced himself as Mr. Juan, explained with polite enthusiasm about the varieties and methods of production. Trying to impress him with my knowledge, I nodded and asked, "What year was the harvest? What's the ideal serving temperature? Which dishes does it pair best with?" At some point, I felt someone behind me. Heavy boots stepped closer, and as I turned my head slightly, I recognized the familiar profile, Peak Nguyen. My heart tightened with surprise. I even flinched. Him? Here? In such a refined place, where someone with his permanent reputation hardly belonged. Well, he said, his voice carrying a slight rasp. Who would have thought I'd meet Khan Rumi here? I slowly turned, trying to keep a calm expression. He looked different from his school years. No longer the disheveled boy. He carried himself with a grown man's confidence, and still with defiance. A dark, sturdy jacket, a scarf around his neck. His dark hair fell loosely across his forehead. And his eyes. Still glinting with the same mocking spark as years ago. "You're into rare wines too?" I asked, though the bluntness of the question felt odd even to me. But in my mind, suspicion gnawed. What business does he have here, if not a coincidence? "I dabble in a bit of everything," he replied evasively with a smirk. "Perhaps wine will come in handy for one of my projects." "A project?" I echoed, doubtful. He nodded, glancing at the shelves. "I'm organizing a small exhibition of my design works, and I need the right atmosphere for the opening. Turns out the guests are expecting some refreshments. So, I'm looking for a suitable wine. And, to be honest, I just enjoy looking at these thousands of bottles." Inside, I scoffed, an exhibition of design works? Wasn't it said that he dropped out of college? But instead of asking more, I only nodded politely. I didn't want to show too much interest. "So, have you found the perfect bottle for your gift?" he asked, glancing at the catalog in my hands. "Still deciding," I admitted, trying to sound indifferent. "Mr. Juan is explaining the selection." The shopkeeper, spotting a new customer, immediately perked up and shifted his attention to Peak Nguyen. He began describing wines suited for formal events, leaving me free for the moment. But silence lingered between Nguyen and me, heavy and awkward. To fill it, I stepped toward the shelves and pointed, "I think this Bordeaux will do." French. They praise it for rich notes of currant and plum. And this one. Italian Bordeaux, very full-bodied. Or maybe I should choose something Asian. For symbolism? Depends on how much your family or your future husband values fine taste. My future husband, I repeated, and the words sounded unpleasant, especially saying them in his presence. He has refined taste. He knows wines. But this gift is more of a formality than a gesture to please him. My parents just want to demonstrate our sophistication, I said mechanically, then caught myself. Why was I telling Nguyen this? He was still watching me, slightly from above, as if trying to read my thoughts. Deep in his gaze, I once again saw that familiar mockery, the one that had followed him since childhood. To regain my composure, I quickly turned back to the shelf, picked up a bottle, read the label, and checked the price. Impressive, his ironic voice came from behind me. But in that case, you should probably go for something truly expensive. So that everyone immediately sees, oh, Rumi's giving a real treasure. Not everything is defined by price, I quietly objected, my fingers tightening around the cold glass. Oh, but weren't you raised to believe exactly that? He chuckled. Being the mayor's daughter, you grew up surrounded by, let's say, lofty matters. Or am I wrong? For a moment, irritation flared in me. His words struck a nerve, especially the irony with which he said mayor's daughter. I was sick of hearing that label. As if I had no self, no identity, just another piece of my family's status. Nguyen looked straight at me, and I sensed that he cared about how I reacted. It felt like he was searching for the same little girl who once shoved him at the temple and laughed back at his mischief. "We don't choose the family we're born into," I finally said, trying to sound cold. "You of all people should know that." He bit his lip for a moment, as if weighing my words, then gave a short nod, as though admitting there was truth in what I had said. I hadn't expected that reaction. And in that strange tension, we both fell silent. As if we were each wondering what in us was habit to oppose one another, and what were real feelings. But the silence was broken when Mr. Huan returned, clearly deciding it was the perfect moment to make us a special offer. He briefly presented several higher-priced wines. I shook myself from my thoughts and tried to focus. After all, I had come here for a reason and wasn't about to spend an eternity in the store, especially not in Pete Nguyen's company. "If you'd like to purchase a truly unique gift, we have a limited vintage from a vineyard in the south of France," Mr. Huan said in a businesslike tone. "Only 6 bottles were brought into Korea, and we have 2 left. The price, of course, is appropriate. But every connoisseur of wine considers it a masterpiece." "Incredible," Nguyen interjected. "Maybe that's exactly what I'll buy." His confident tone stirred an unexpected sting of jealousy in me. Was he trying to outshine me with his purchase? I shot him a glance. He, as if oblivious to my irritation, went on questioning the shopkeeper about the details. "Fine," I said to Mr. Huan. "Then show me that bottle. And please bring a glass for tasting, if possible." The shopkeeper quickly disappeared behind the counter, leaving the 2 of us alone. My heart beat faster against my will. Every time he was near, I felt that same confusing mixture of irritation and unexplainable excitement. Worst of all, I was sure he knew it, and that was why he acted even more brazenly. "You still haven't said, when's the wedding?" he asked in a neutral tone. I sighed. The wedding topic was my weak spot. In truth, the date hadn't yet been set. Our families were still discussing it. Most likely in half a year or a little more, but as my parents said, we'd like to finalize everything before year's end. They were preparing an official announcement so that it would become a local society event. Of course, I wasn't thrilled about that, but such were the rules for the mayor's daughter. "It hasn't been decided yet," I muttered. "They'll announce it soon." "You don't seem too excited about the idea," he observed. And in his voice there wasn't scorn, more like a strange sympathy. "And why would you think I don't want to get married? I can see it in your eyes. And besides, people whose lives are going smoothly don't usually look this tense. You're holding that catalog like you want to tear it apart." I looked down and saw that I had indeed crushed the thin pages in my grip. Damn it. Quickly, I released them and smoothed them flat. There he was again, striking right at my weak spot. I wanted to walk away, but didn't want to seem like I was fleeing. "Besides," he added, "we've known since childhood that your parents plan your life years in advance. I think you just don't argue with them. But don't you want to live on your own terms?" "Enough," I cut him off sharply. "What business is it of yours? Better tell me about your life. How's that design exhibition of yours? Hard to believe you've turned into such a model artist or designer." He smiled, clearly catching my sarcasm, but didn't take offense. "I'm working on a clothing line inspired by urban culture and traditional motifs of our town. Yes, I dropped out of college because I couldn't find what I was looking for there. But I didn't give up. I hope you'll come on opening day. Consider this an official invitation. I'll probably be busy." "That's up to you." Nguyen shrugged. "But I think you might find it interesting. After all, back in school, you used to draw very well. I remember your works winning competitions." I flushed. How does he know about my drawings? Yes, I had exhibited them at school contests, but I never thought he was paying attention. Before I could respond, Mr. Huan returned with a small cart and 2 glasses for tasting. He displayed a dark crimson bottle with elegant lettering on the label. He briefly recounted the harvest, the vineyard, the aging process. I asked for a pour, carefully lifted the glass, admired the color, and took a sip. Rich notes of red berries, a hint of tartness, a long aftertaste. Yes, it was truly impressive. I'll take it, I said firmly. And I will too, Nguyen echoed. Mr. Juan looked delighted at the prospect of a double sale. I, however, felt a strange sharp bitterness, blending with the refined flavor still lingering on my tongue. Why did it always feel like every step I took, he was taking right beside me? Or was I imagining it? An excellent choice, the shopkeeper praised. Shall I prepare 2 bottles for you both? Or pack them separately? We both nodded in unison. While he was busy with the packaging, I carefully avoided looking at Nguyen. But he leaned slightly closer and murmured, "Don't worry, I won't announce that I copied your choice. I have my own reasons." Yes, of course, I muttered, watching the sealed bags. I'm just curious why you'd need such an expensive bottle. You can't have that much money to throw around. You dropped out, people say you've struggled with work. Well, first of all, he said, taking the bag from the shopkeeper, I earn through freelance projects and selling my own collections. I'm not as poor as people think. Second, for my exhibition, everything needs to be top tier, let it surprise the guests. You see? Sometimes it's worth spending on something if you know it'll pay off an impression. If you say so, I shrugged. I just hope your show goes smoothly. Without scandals. He smirked, I'll try not to disappoint the audience. But maybe I'll add just a bit of provocation. I have a reputation to uphold, the guy who brings trouble. I bit my lip, does he really embrace that image himself? Before I could respond, he lifted his bag and said, "Good luck with your gift. And with your fiancé. I hope he likes the wine. Maybe next time I'll see you at your bachelorette party." The sheer cheek of that last line nearly made me choke, but I kept my composure. As soon as he disappeared through the door, I felt the ground stop trembling beneath my feet. Yes, his presence was unsettling and infuriating all at once. What does he think he's doing? I wondered, even as a strange warmth spread through me, bordering on something dangerously close to pleasure. That sharp mixture of emotions struck me every time we met. By the time I left the shop, night had nearly fallen. Streetlights lit the empty cobblestones. I gripped the wine bag, my breath oddly unsteady. Why does he always leave me so unsettled? Was life really going to keep throwing us together? I didn't know the answer. But at that moment, I was sure this would not be our last meeting. When I got home, a small family meeting was already underway. My father sat at the head of the living room table, leafing through a folder of documents. My mother was arranging teacups with strict precision, while my fiancé, Cheonseok, sat beside her, here to discuss the details of our engagement. Cheonseok was the image of a young politician, polite, neat, his practiced smiles always in place, always choosing the right words. He had studied at a prestigious university, risen quickly through a youth political organization, and earned the trust of powerful people. I didn't dislike him, he gave me flowers, chatted politely about my hobbies. But something inside me knew, it was too perfect. He did everything right, but there was no real spark between us. "Ah, Rumi," said my father as I entered, "finally, you're here. Join us, we're discussing the guest list for the engagement." "Good evening," I bowed politely. "Sorry I'm late, I was choosing a suitable gift for Cheonseok's family." "Not a problem," my fiancé replied with a gentle smile. "I hope it wasn't too difficult a choice." I nodded and placed the bag on the table, letting them see the bottle of wine inside. My mother cast a quick glance at it, then returned to pouring tea, though I could tell she was already estimating its value and judging the appropriateness of the gift. "We were just planning the date and venue for the ceremony," my father explained, adjusting his glasses. "We're thinking of late November." "That's a little more than half a year from now," but enough time to prepare. Guests will need to come from all over the country, and some of Cheonseok's acquaintances from Seoul as well. Late November, I repeated. Probably not a bad time, no more autumn heat, but still far from the cold. Inside, I felt a storm brewing, but I kept it in check. I hadn't seen a reason to argue. My parents would always stand their ground. I was used to the fact that any no or let's reconsider from me was taken as a challenge. And if I had once tried to argue, I had long since given up. Growing up taught me, it's easier to agree, they make the decisions anyway. Excellent, my father concluded satisfactorily. Then let's move on to organizational matters. Wei-in, dear, you'll help Rumi with choosing the wedding dress and decorating the hall, won't you? Of course, my mother confirmed, turning to me. Rumi, we'll visit several salons. I want your wedding to be perfect after all, you only get married once. However, as they talked about plans, a fleeting scene from the wine shop surfaced in my mind, piqued Nguyen's smirk as he said, don't you want to live on your own terms? I pushed the thought away, yet its distant echo lingered. It was as if a crack had formed inside me. Was I afraid that this whole event wasn't what my soul truly wanted? Rumi, Cheonseok suddenly addressed me, glancing at my hands clasped in my lap. Are you all right? You seem distracted. Sorry, I said, blinking. I was just thinking about the details of the dress. You can relax, my mother added, smiling. We'll handle everything. Especially since we have close boutique partners ready to provide the best collection. Yes, of course, I replied, trying to appear cheerful. Soon, the conversation shifted to details, hall decorations, color scheme, hors d'oeuvres. I nodded, offering neutral suggestions. Cheonseok politely approved each decision, giving politically correct reasoning. We discussed my future in a calm tone, yet my heart felt heavy and empty. By evening, Cheonseok had left for a meeting with colleagues. I went up to my room. My mother seemed about to say something, but seeing my exhausted face, she let it go for later. I sank into a chair by the mirror. My reflection, pale, tense, eyes frozen with anxiety. As if I realized I stood at the threshold of something decisive. For some reason, Nguyen's words kept replaying in my mind, don't you want to live on your own terms? The thought made me queasy. He could see right through me, seeing that I had long agreed to the life my parents had chosen. I moved to the window. Outside, the city slept under streetlights, dark mountains looming in the distance. In the silence, I felt sharply that something important was missing, something real and alive. All my life, I had been taught to follow the path laid out for me. And I didn't know if I could ever step off it. The next day, on my way to the park, my mother caught up with me, her tense smile hinting she wanted to speak privately. Rumi, she said softly as we sat on a bench in a quiet corner of the park. I want to speak frankly with you. You seem too absorbed in yourself. Tell me, what troubles you? I glanced at her. My mother wasn't one for open conversations usually, everything revolved around discipline and reminders of family duty. But perhaps she had noticed something? I fiddled with the sleeve of my light sweater, thinking carefully about how to respond. It's fine, Mom. I'm just tired of all the preparations. And everything is moving so fast. Maybe I need more time. If you're worried about the wedding, you shouldn't be, my mother said with a half smile, trying to reassure me. The Peak family are decent people. Cheonseok is a wonderful fiancé. Trust me, you'll be happy with him. I don't doubt they're decent people, I nodded. But, Mom, maybe I don't want to get married right now? It came out softer than I intended, yet my mother heard. I saw the corners of her lips tighten. She drew in a deep breath and looked at me sternly. Rumi, dear. We've already decided. The families have agreed. Do you want to jeopardize our reputation, your father's reputation? You understand that influential people are already involved, and if we back out, it would be a scandal. You were raised well, given the best. Do you want to throw it all away? A lump rose in my throat. Of course, I didn't want a scandal. But perhaps I did want another life. I am just asking, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I understand you're anxious. Any bride would be before such an event. But we'll make sure you have a happy and dignified life. Remember, we have a responsibility to the city, to the people who respect your father. They want to see our family as a model of virtue and harmony. That means no doubts, no scandals, no improper rumors. I remained silent. My mother's words were a clear command: do not disrupt the established order. To her, it was obvious, I was simply whining or suffering from pre-wedding stress. To say that deep down I dreamed of something entirely different seemed pointless. She would never understand, and even if she did, she would not accept it. Such doubts would cost too much. All right, Mom, sorry, I didn't mean to cause trouble, I said, lowering my gaze. My mother relaxed her shoulders and squeezed my hand with relief. That's better, dear. And Rumi. I heard you met Pete Noying yesterday. They said he went to the same wine shop as you. I tensed. Of course, in one evening, gossip spread throughout our small town. Yes, we crossed paths in the shop by chance. But it was only for a few minutes, I replied cautiously. I hope you understand that he's still not the most desirable person in our circle. Yes, he has a reputation. They say everything Noyan touches turns into trouble. My mother emphasized the word trouble. I wouldn't want you seen with him. Understand? It could spark gossip, unnecessary discussions. I didn't seek him out, I defended myself. He just appeared there. Just stay away from him. He has never brought benefit or peace. I wouldn't want you entangled in his antics, especially on the eve of your wedding. I nodded, knowing arguing was pointless. I also didn't want to give reason for gossip. But something burned inside me at her words: he has never brought benefit. Perhaps it was true. But I had seen something human, something alive in him. And it went against my perfect order. In the following days, I tried to immerse myself in routine, assisting my father at the mayor's office, handling documents, learning to speak politely with visitors who came with various city concerns. It helped distract me, but only until I overheard a fragment of conversation between two employees. They whispered, unaware I was listening, "Did you hear? Pete Noyan caused another scandal." Yes, and Rumi's father is furious. It could affect the mayor's reputation. Curiosity and anxiety flared within me. Once the employees moved on to another topic, I entered the reception area to find more reliable information. My longtime acquaintance, Lee Suhayan, sat behind the desk. She had worked as my father's secretary. I asked gently, "Suhayan, sorry to bother you. Do you know what the scandal with Pete Noyan is about?" She raised her eyebrows and paused, as if weighing whether to tell me. Well, recently there was a municipal committee meeting about unauthorized activities. Apparently, Noyan organized a fashion show in an abandoned building without permission and turned it into a sort of underground club. There was music, alcohol. Neighbors complained about the noise. The police went there, and well, there was a big party, and, as they say, some artists even performed pieces that weren't entirely legal. The mayor is displeased because such behavior casts a shadow over the city's image. I pondered. So Pete Noyan really did hold a designer show as he mentioned in the shop, only it turned out to be rather provocative. Very much in his style. I exhaled heavily. No wonder my mother had so many warnings. Yet, despite Noyan's obvious foolishness, I didn't feel any pleasure at his misfortune. "Thank you," I said to Suhayan. "I think I should talk to Dad if he needs help." "Yes, he's in his office now." "But be careful, he's in a very bad mood," she whispered as a warning. I nodded and walked down the corridor to my father's office. I knocked, entered. He was there, frowning, deeply absorbed in some papers. Hearing my steps, he looked up. "Rumi, did something happen?" I found out that Pete Nguyen held an event without permission. I began cautiously. I heard you're upset. How can I help? My father frowned, leaning back in his chair. That boy has been a headache for many since childhood. And now, as I try to promote the city's image as calm and cultured, he creates a scandal and undermines order. The administrative office has already filed a complaint. He may be fined, and if more serious violations are found, he could even be held accountable. The police are already investigating. If we don't act, residents will think we condone such behavior. And what happens next? I asked, feeling my heart flutter strangely. The police will conduct an investigation. I don't want to stir up a scandal, but if the violations are serious, I'll have to show that the law is equal for everyone. In any case, we cannot allow our family to be associated with such a person. Considering the upcoming alliance with the Peak family, we cannot afford these neighborly connections. I clenched my hands, standing before his desk, thinking that I, too, am a Peak like Nguyen. But sharing a surname had never made us close. We were more like opposites. Now I saw that my father was ready to act harshly. His priority was reputation. Dad, I spoke softly, what if it wasn't as bad as the reports say? Maybe it really was just a creative party. Couldn't he be given a chance to make amends? A chance? My father raised his head. Rumi, I know you are kind, but this young man has already shown that he cannot follow rules. As mayor, I cannot overlook this. I hope you understand. Yes, of course, I understand, I muttered. Sorry for asking. Leaving the office, I felt drained. A strange inner conflict tormented me. On one hand, I condemned Nguyen for his recklessness. On the other, I worried that he might be treated too harshly. That evening, I lay in bed thinking about him, Pete Nguyen, a fool who created his own problems, or a free-spirited artist challenging social norms and striving to express himself. A few days after the scandal, I, for reasons I couldn't explain, decided to visit a small art cafe on the edge of town. I had heard that creative types sometimes came there to discuss new projects. Perhaps I just wanted a breath of freedom, the kind I always felt looking at paintings, sketches, and photographs. And there, as if expecting me, at one of the tables, sat Pete Nguyen. My heart skipped a beat. My inner voice whispered, leave before he notices you. But he already had. Our eyes met. His gaze reflected surprise, then a mischievous smirk, as if he were pleased we had run into each other again. Peek Rumi, he said, rising from his seat to greet me. Didn't think I'd see you here. I forced a polite smile. And I didn't think. What are you doing here? Meeting with friends on a project. He gestured toward a couple of young people at a nearby table who were animatedly discussing something. We're planning the upcoming street art festival. I'm not giving up, despite certain obstacles. His voice was low, yet in the last words, I sensed a hidden reproach. Surely he meant the recent police incident. I felt his attentive gaze on me. I hear things didn't go very well with your party, I said carefully. Yeah, had to talk to the police, he grinned crookedly. But it's fine, we'll figure out what happened. The important thing is my collection was appreciated there. I even sold a few original pieces. In that format? I exclaimed, not realizing I was sounding slightly reproachful. You could have gotten permission. Why do everything so riskily? He shrugged. Maybe because in this city, getting permission for anything beyond conservative culture is nearly impossible. Your father loves order, and my project doesn't appeal to him. Or many others. It's easier to do it and apologize than to ask and be denied. I lowered my gaze. The words your father were not spoken maliciously, but they were bitter. I realized he probably felt like an outcast in our city. A city where my father decides fates, and I am the dutiful daughter. What a gulf between us. Yes, your family really is against creative experiments, he added, noticing my silence. Not surprising, you're used to everything going according to plan and being proper. He said you, and I felt the word generalized too much. I, apparently, was among those who didn't understand him. Listen, I said, taking a breath. I don't always agree with my father's position. But you know yourself, scandals can ruin not only your life, but those around you. And people will start gossiping, saying that Peak Nguyen again brings trouble? He finished my sentence for me. Our eyes met, and I read in his gaze a mixture of hurt and challenge. I nodded silently, knowing that's exactly what everyone said. I had heard the phrase my whole life. Yes, exactly. But why don't you try to change that image? Why, Rumi? He stepped closer, and I felt his warm breath. Why, if everyone already wrote me off as bad? Wherever I go, there's a trail of old rumors and prejudice. Let them talk. I will live the way I want. But that only confirms their words, I tried to explain. Let it be, he smirked, yet a flash of sadness crossed his eyes. At least I feel free. Yes, I pay for it with inconveniences, fines, and disapproval from officials. But at least I'm not trapped in a cage where they've tried to put me since childhood. Unlike some. I felt heat burning inside me. Is he implying I'm in a cage? Maybe he's right. But his words struck painfully at my self-esteem. You know, I said, trying not to break, everyone has their own path. Yours is to challenge, mine is. I don't know yet. But I won't let you claim I have no freedom of choice. Do you really have it? He whispered. Could you, right now, walk away from your upcoming wedding if you're not happy? I froze, not knowing what to answer. Could I? Theoretically, yes, but practically. Parents, society, the fiancé's family, all forced me to say no. Silence between us became painfully tense. I'm sorry, he added after a moment. I didn't mean to seem rude. It's just, I don't like hypocrisy. And when I see you, I remember that little girl who laughed, pushed me around at the temple, and wasn't afraid to be herself. Where did she go? My heart tightened. He remembered me like that? I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that I had to grow up and learn to live under the weight of my parents' expectations? That I myself no longer knew who I really was? I should go, I finally said, taking a step back. I need to check something else. Okay, he said softly. Take care, Rumi. And remember, if you ever want to break free, I'll help you remember who you can be. I didn't answer and quickly left the cafe. Only outside did I allow myself to catch my breath. I felt like crying, though there was no real reason. His words echoed in my mind, if you ever want to break free. But why did they sound so strange, almost like a temptation? And why did I feel that he could see right through me? About 2 weeks passed. Preparations for the engagement continued, a spacious hall at a hotel had been chosen, dozens of guests invited. My mother traveled with me to Seoul to pick out the dress for the formal ceremony later. On the wedding day, there would be another, more lavish dress, but even the engagement had to be impressive. I looked at myself in the salon mirror, a slender girl in a dress. Yet in my eyes, I more often saw not joy, but a question, is this really what I want? Sometimes I met with Cheonseok to discuss music, flowers, the menu. He was courteous, but our conversations only covered organizational details, future political plans, or family events. I tried to imagine, we get married, live in a large apartment downtown, he has prospects to become an influential politician, I play the role of the perfect wife. Perhaps we'd seem like a happy couple. Inside, I found no inspiration in that scenario. One evening, after another fitting, I decided to walk along the riverside beyond the city outskirts. It was a quiet spot, few people walked there, but the water and its reflections looked beautiful. Under the lone lamps, I noticed a familiar silhouette. Peak Nguyen was sitting on a bench, watching the lights shimmering on the river. When he saw me, he didn't seem surprised, as if he had been expecting me. "Good evening," I said, approaching. "What are you doing here so late?" "Thinking," he replied briefly. "And you?" "I am thinking too. You know, it's strange how often we run into each other. The town is rather big." He smiled and shook his head. "Not that big. Besides, we seem to have similar habits, wandering alone at night." I sat down next to him, keeping a small distance, but feeling my heart race. A few months ago, the idea of sitting alone in the dark next to that peak Nguyen would have been unthinkable. Yet I felt no fear, only curiosity and trust. "You could be at home with your family," he noted, looking at the river. "Yes, I could. But I'm tired of all this. Constant control, endless talks about the wedding. It's like I don't have a personal life besides it." "And you want a different life?" "Do I want it?" I sighed quietly. "Yes, probably. But I don't know how to build it. I always feel I have to justify expectations. I never dared put myself and my desires first. Or rather, I never even knew what I truly wanted." He listened silently. The profile of his face in the lamplight was sharply defined, his gaze fixed in the distance. I couldn't help admiring his calm expression. He no longer looked like a mischievous troublemaker. He seemed like a man with deep inner strength. "When we were children, you always seemed like a hooligan to me," I said, trying to ease the tension. "And even now. Sometimes you act provocatively. But at the same time, I notice you're striving for something bigger. Perhaps recognition?" He turned to me, squinting. "Recognition? Maybe. But I don't seek recognition from those who don't want to understand me. I want to realize myself in design, in art. I want those who truly see my work to feel something when they look at it. If they recognize me, they're great. If not, their choice. But I won't break myself for it." "That's admirable," I agreed, feeling a slight envy of his confidence. "I love art myself. Once, I dreamed of drawing, participating in exhibitions." "I know," he interrupted with a smile. "I saw your work back in school. You always loved to depict mountains, right?" I nodded. "The mountains behind our city inspired me. They seemed a symbol of grandeur and freedom. I loved watching them at dawn, shrouded in thin mist." "So why did you stop drawing?" he asked, lowering his voice. "My parents said it wasn't serious. Art won't give you a stable income or help your political career, that's what I heard when applying to university. Then I took up pencils and brushes less and less. Until I stopped entirely. I simply didn't have time, nor did I feel the desire anymore." A brief pause followed. Then Nguyen spoke quietly, "You know, Rumi. If you ever want to try again, I can show you the studio where we work with the others. There's a space to draw. I think you'd like the atmosphere." "Thank you," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "I'm not sure I can find the time. But I'll think about it." He smiled. At that moment, I realized there was no mockery in his smile, which I had so feared. Only warmth. Goosebumps ran down my skin. I felt something shift inside me, as if the moment had arrived when I stopped seeing him merely as a troublemaker. He seemed complex, multifaceted. And suddenly, my head spun as our eyes met in the dim light. "Rumi," he said softly. "I know everyone says I only bring trouble. Perhaps it's true. But with you, I don't want to be anyone's problem. I just want to be near. If you need that." My heart seemed to leap. I was afraid to move, not wanting to break the moment. I felt an attraction to him that was hard to explain. Yet I was already another's fiancé. I should have stayed away, and still, I sat there, captivated. Perhaps I already realized I had crossed the line of what is acceptable for a mayor's daughter, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. I wanted to say 1,000 things, but only one came out. Thank you, Noyan. He nodded. And we sat for a while in silence, watching the flickering lights on the water. I didn't know what would happen next. But I felt that I was returning home already a different person. After that evening by the riverside, I began thinking about Pete Noyan more often. The momentary escape into routine always brought his smile or the echo of his words back to mind. I felt guilty toward Cheonseok. He was my fiancé, yet I had no such feelings for him. The situation became more complicated when Cheonseok suggested a romantic walk. We walked under the streetlights, holding hands. He spoke about politics, plans to become a governor's advisor. I nodded automatically and suddenly noticed Pete Noyan on the other side of the street. Our eyes met. In his gaze flashed something painful, almost jealous, and he looked away. The encounter was tormenting. The family expects the wedding, everything is heading toward a grand celebration. And I am drawn to the person I was told to avoid. A few days later, I tried frantically not to think about Noyan. But on Sunday morning, Cheonseok called and asked to meet at a restaurant. Expecting a discussion about the engagement, I found him in a worried state, sitting, lips pressed together, drumming his fingers on the table. "Hi," I said, sitting across from him. "You wanted to talk about something?" "Rumi." He sighed. "Sorry for being so abrupt. But there's something I need to clarify. About our wedding." My heart sank. Had he decided to cancel the engagement? And why? What happened? I tried to speak evenly. "You see, my mother called me yesterday," he began. "And she said she heard a rumor. That you were repeatedly seen with Pete Noyan. They say you are secretly seeing each other. I don't know where this came from. But you understand our families. My mother is horrified that a scandal might erupt." My heart raced. Rumors? I thought. God, our small town and its gossip. I cleared my throat. I don't know what to say. I did meet Noyan a couple of times by chance. We talked, but there's nothing between us. I didn't lie, there had been no kisses or official confessions. But what was happening inside me already showed that the chemistry between us was uncomfortably strong. I understand, Cheonseok held my gaze for a long moment. But these rumors must stop. Our engagement is imminent, and I don't want my parents to doubt your fidelity or fear that your family could tarnish my reputation and that of my future political partners. You don't believe me? I whispered, feeling a surge of indignation rising within me. Try to understand, he shook his head. It's not about whether I believe you or not. It's about politics. Here, rumors and public perception often decide everything. So, I ask you, avoid him. Don't let anyone see you together. It's better for everyone this way. I looked into his eyes and saw concern, even fear of losing social status, but no jealousy or pain over possible infidelity. That was even sadder. My fiancé, it turned out, was protecting not love, but his political career. I felt a cold distance. Still, I said aloud, Yes, I understand. All right. Excellent. Then we have an agreement. Cheonseok exhaled with relief. Let's meet with our parents soon to finalize the engagement details. And thank you for cooperating, Rumi. I nodded, and we parted. A hollow feeling gaped in my chest, and in my mind, I heard, "You're forbidden to see Noyan." But how could I forget him now? I resolved to pull myself together and avoid seeking him out. Yet fate intervened again. At the city festival, everyone was invited, including designers and artists. I was assigned to oversee the art exhibition, and there he was, Noyan, displaying his works. When he saw me, his gaze softened. Remembering Cheonseok's words, I pretended to be busy. From a distance, I admired his stand, unusual prints, bold lines, a mix of traditional patterns and modern forms. When he caught my gaze, he realized I was impressed. I quickly moved to another stand, pretending to critique ceramic vases. But within minutes, Nguyen found me near the decorative pieces. "Rumi," he said softly. "Can we talk?" "I can't," I blurted without looking back. "Why?" I pressed my lips together. Talking here, where people could see us, was already a potential scandal. Yet my heart demanded an answer. I resolved, let's step behind the stage. "There's no one there," I suggested quietly. We moved to a small corner behind a canopy, where props were stored. I turned to him, feeling everything inside me trembling. "You're avoiding me," he accused. "Yes," I admitted. "I was told not to meet you. Because of rumors. They say it threatens my engagement." "And you obeyed?" Bitterness laced his voice. "I have no choice. My family, Cheonseok's family, everyone expects obedience. If I don't comply, the consequences will be too severe." I stared desperately into his eyes, hoping he would understand. "I understand," he said softly. "But tell me, Rumi, what do you want?" Everything inside me flipped. I don't want to regret choosing a life that's not mine. But I can't just destroy everything my parents have built for me. I can't ruin the engagement, it would be a catastrophe for their reputation. Nguyen took my hand, and I felt a hot wave run through my body. I looked around the empty space behind the stage, afraid someone might be watching. But in that moment, I didn't care, I just wanted to feel him close. "I'm not forcing anyone," he said quietly, looking straight into my eyes. "I just want you to be honest with yourself. Tell me, do you love Cheonseok?" The words caught in my throat. "No. I respect him, he's a good person, but I don't feel love." "And me?" He squeezed my hand slightly, his heartbeat seemingly in sync with mine. I couldn't lie. In the past weeks, it had all become clear. His image had penetrated my thoughts, my days and nights. I whispered in desperation and passion, "Yes. I think Nguyen. But I have no right." He cut me off with a sudden movement, pulling me close, looking into my eyes, slowly leaning in. For a moment, the world vanished. I heard only my blood pounding in my ears and felt his warm breath. Before I could realize, our lips met. A shiver ran through my body, my fingers instinctively clutched his sleeve. This was my first real kiss, and it was with the boy I was told to avoid. At that moment, I knew I could no longer return to my previous life. The kiss was brief but awakening. We pulled back, looking at each other with fear and exhilaration. We knew we had crossed a line, yet could not restrain our embrace. "Sorry," I blurted, though I didn't know whom I was apologizing to, myself or him. "Don't apologize," he whispered, resting his forehead against mine. "I don't want to lose you, Rumi. But I know it won't be easy. I need to think about what to do next." I quietly freed myself from his embrace, feeling panic rising. "Please don't think I can just leave everything behind. I need to figure things out." "Of course," he nodded, releasing my hand. "I'll be here if you want to take a step toward me." I couldn't stay any longer. Heart racing, I ran back to the exhibition, helping guests and maintaining calm, though inside, a storm of feelings raged, one I had never experienced. The kiss had unlocked a hidden hunger for love and freedom. After the festival, I barely slept. Thoughts swirled, what now? How will I tell my family I don't want to marry Cheonseok? That I love someone else? Yet imagining life without Nguyen was unbearable. With him, I felt alive. A week later, the official engagement was scheduled. My mother was thrilled, my father smiled more than usual. I walked as if in a dream, occasionally hoping I might dare something. On the day of the ceremony, I woke with terrible anxiety. They dressed me in a luxurious gown, styled my hair. Father was on the phone with guests. The phone rang, and I saw his face change. Something had happened. "What do you mean accident?" he exclaimed. Cheonseok's car had been in a minor accident on the way to the engagement. Injuries were not serious, but he was taken to the hospital. The ceremony was cancelled. I was filled with mixed feelings, worry for Cheonseok and a strange sense of relief. At the hospital, it turned out, bruises and a small cut on his hand, a couple of days of observation. In the ward, pale but alive, he smiled politely. "Sorry for ruining everything. Damn car cut us off. The important thing is that you're okay," Father exhaled in relief. "Yes, nothing serious," added my mother. "We'll postpone the ceremony. Get well." I approached Cheonseok carefully, taking his healthy hand. He looked at me apologetically. "Sorry, Rumi. I know you were preparing. I hope you're not angry." "Angry? Of course not. How can you be angry in such a situation?" I shook my head, my voice trembling slightly. "Just get better soon." Inside me was neither anger nor joy. Rather, a realization. Fate had given me a reprieve, a chance to rethink. When we left the ward, I told my parents, "I need a little walk, it feels stifling. I'll probably go outside." They nodded, absorbed in discussions about upcoming plans. I went down to the first floor, through the hospital hall to the exit. There, by the porch, people were smoking and chatting quietly. I headed to a quiet courtyard with a few trees. And suddenly, I saw a black silhouette leaning on the railing. It was Peak Nguyen. "How did you end up here?" I asked in surprise, stepping closer. He turned, looking a bit embarrassed. "Lee Soo-yoon from the mayor's office called me. She said your ceremony was canceled because of the accident. I was worried and wanted to make sure you're all right." My heart trembled at his concern. "I'm fine. Cheonseok will be okay too, just minor injuries." Nguyen was silent for a moment, then asked softly, "And you? What are you going to do now?" I sighed, feeling fear and determination battling inside me. Seeing him again, I felt the same wave that had come over me during our kiss. I knew, if I didn't make a decision now, I might never be able to. "You know," I began, "this morning I woke up with the feeling that I was going against myself. I don't want to live in a loveless marriage. But I'm afraid of destroying everything my parents have built, afraid of judgment, of gossip. I'm scared of betraying the family that has done so much for me." "I understand," he nodded, eyes full of sympathy. "But after this accident, I realized, life can end at any moment, and if I keep pretending that I don't care, I might never truly be happy. I love you, Nguyen. I can't deny it. I want to be with you, even if it means going against my family. Rumi." He took my hands. "I never thought I had the right to ask you for this. But if you truly want to be with me, I'm ready to fight the world for you. Just tell me, are you sure?" I took a deep breath. I don't know what my parents will say, but I'm sure I don't want to marry Cheonseok. I want to take the risk and follow my feelings. I want to be with you. He looked at me tenderly, and in that moment I felt like I was soaring above the chasm of fear. We embraced, and it felt as though tears of relief and joy were ready to fall. The next step was, of course, the hardest, telling my parents. When we returned home from the hospital, my mother, exhausted and upset, had removed her formal attire and was about to go to her room. I stopped her and my father. "I need to tell you something." They exchanged glances, sensing the seriousness. We went to the living room and sat at the table. I took a deep breath. I cannot continue preparations for the wedding with Cheonseok. I don't love him. And I will not marry him. The words came out clear and deliberate. I saw my mother's face pale and my father frown. Silence fell, as if eternal. "What does this mean, Rumi?" My father asked in a threatening tone. "Do you realize what you're saying?" "I do, Dad. I understand how much this will hurt our agreements. But I fell in love with someone else, and I simply cannot marry someone I do not love. Forgive me. Who? My mother exclaimed, already guessing. Don't tell me it's Peak Nguyen? I nodded. Her face contorted with rage. How can you? Have you completely lost your mind? That boy is a constant source of trouble. He dropped out of school, breaks laws, causes scandals. Do you realize how society will see us? Mom, I said, trying to stay calm though I wanted to scream, I know about his reputation, about your prejudices. But people can change. And you may not see it, but he's talented, kind, sincere. He lives as he believes is right, and he is not a bad person. Rumi. Her father interrupted loudly, slamming his hand on the table. You don't understand what you're saying. We raised you to be a worthy successor of the Peak family. And now you want to be involved with a boy who scorns our principles and isn't shy about showing it? People will laugh at us. How can I face respected colleagues? How do I explain the broken engagement with the Pack family, who expected close collaboration? Dad, I understand this will cause a scandal. But I can't act otherwise. Isn't my happiness important to you? Your happiness? He threw up his hands. Are you naive enough to think you'll find happiness with this? Troublemaker? In a year, you'll beg to return to a stable, secured life, mark my words. No, I shook my head stubbornly. I believe that together we can build a life based on mutual love. It may not be easy, but at least it will be real. My mother began to tremble in fear. Rumi, wake up. You don't understand what you're saying. Rumors are already spreading. Your relatives are whispering. If you continue, we will become a laughingstock. I will not allow my daughter to destroy what I have worked on for years, my father cut in sharply. If you go against us, don't expect help or support. I will disown you if you bind your life to that boy. My heart froze. My father had never spoken to me like that. My mother was in tears, and he looked at me with cold resolve. Yet, to my surprise, I felt only the determination I had been missing before. If you disown me, Dad, that will be your decision, not mine. I don't want to lose my family, but I will not marry against my will. Forgive me. My father straightened, as if ready for battle. My mother sobbed, begging me to reconsider. But I had already made my decision. I turned and went to my room, a storm of pain, anger, and bitter relief swirling in my heart. I knew there was no turning back. The next day, I packed only the essentials, my most treasured items, a sketchbook, a few photographs, some clothes. My mother wept in the hallway, begging me to change my mind. My father didn't even come out, saying that this rebellious daughter doesn't deserve a farewell. I fought back tears. But I knew, if I gave in, I would betray myself. I left the house, the very house where I had lived all my life, and took a taxi to the small countryside home where Nguyen lived with his sister Solhai and grandmother Sunhai. Yes, I was going all in, hoping he would accept me. And when he opened the door, surprised to see me with a suitcase, I said with a trembling voice, I'm done. I left them. Can I stay with you until I figure out how to live from here? He didn't question or scold me. He immediately hugged me, as if protecting me. Solhai, his younger sister, peeked from the room, surprised, but understood something important was happening and left us alone. I cried on his chest, releasing pain and fear. He stroked my hair, murmuring, "It will be all right, Rumi. We'll find a way." Thus began my new life. It wasn't easy. My parents almost completely stopped communicating with me, though my mother occasionally called, trying to convince me to return. Nguyen supported me morally and helped me find housing. Within a couple of weeks, I rented an apartment on the outskirts, near his home. I looked for work. My political science degree was useless in art, but I was hired as an assistant at a local gallery. Nguyen and I grew closer. We dined together, laughed, and took trips to the mountains. In the evenings, he would show me his sketches, and I began to draw again. I transformed from the prim mayor's daughter into a girl willing to take risks and move forward. People gossiped, some supported my rebellion, others condemned it. But it didn't matter when I looked into Nguyen's eyes and saw genuine love. We worked on his project. He opened a small studio. I helped with design and bookkeeping. Sometimes, dreams haunted me, my mother crying, begging me to return, my father staring with contempt. I would wake up in a sweat, but Nguyen was there. Alone in the mountains with him, I felt true happiness, being myself, loving and being loved. A few months later, my mother secretly visited my apartment. My father didn't know she was coming. She sat across from me, observing the cozy space, and let out a quiet sigh. "You don't seem hungry, or crying. I thought you would be miserable. But I see. You've grown." I nodded. "Mom, I'm sorry for causing you pain. But I don't regret my decision. I hope someday you'll understand." She was silent for a moment, then finally said, "I can't say that I fully accept it. Your father is still angry. But if you are happy, maybe one day he will understand too." I smiled through my tears and hugged her. It was a small step toward reconciliation. And I believed that, in time, everything would work out. Thus ended my story of how Peak Nguyen, the boy everyone said brought nothing but trouble, became my love and my support. I, Peak Rumi, the mayor's daughter, dared to go against my family for a feeling that was true for me. We are still together. I work in a gallery and continue to paint my own pieces, which have even been displayed in a small exhibition. Nguyen is developing his clothing brand. Though we don't have great wealth or the support of influential people, we hold on to each other, feeling that life has finally gained its flavor. My father still doesn't communicate with me directly. But a few years after I left, when Nguyen and I had a daughter, he came to visit her for the first time. He behaved reservedly, as if out of duty, but I saw tears in his eyes when he held our little girl. Perhaps this was the beginning of our family reconciliation. We all grow, change, and learn to accept each other. I believe that one day he will forgive me for my rebellion and be happy to see my family in his home. And you know, when I look at Nguyen, I see that same spark that always set him apart. He continues to be bold, willing to go against rules if he thinks it necessary. But now I know that behind his daring is a kind heart. He still brings trouble, but it's more a challenge to a society that loves to confine people to rigid expectations. Facing that challenge, I stopped living by others' plans and became truly free. Sometimes, we reminisce about the temple where we first met as children. My mother would whisper, "Peak Nguyen only brings trouble," and I would laugh. Now, I laugh differently, knowing that those troubles became my happiness and liberation. And if I could go back, I would still take the same path, difficult, yes, but leading to true love.